And we are live, as they say in show business. This is my first ever live on YouTube and LinkedIn. So if you're watching it live, comment. Let me know that you are out there. Hopefully I'll be able to see your comments because today I want to cover a very interesting topic with you in the next 10 minutes or so. I want to share with you 3 ways you can stand out when you're presenting online, whether that be for your in-person meetings, at your networking events on Zoom, or when you're holding your own webinars. 3 unusual ways you can stand out when presenting virtually. That is what we're going to cover today. So like I say, comment if you're watching this live. Also comment if you're watching it on the replay as well. And if you have any questions throughout, leave them in the chat too, and I will try and answer them. We've got someone in already watching from India. Rohini, that's great to see you. Thank you for coming along. I will get started now. And like I say, if you've got any questions, just pop them in the chat and I'll cover them the best I can. So why do we need to bother trying to stand out when we're presenting online? Well, the thing is now, when you enter a Zoom call, there are a sea of little windows. A sea of little windows peering into the lives of everyone in that call. And the question is, how do you actually allow yourself to stand out when there's 50 other people in the call? That can be tough. It really can. But when you do stand out, when you do get noticed, that's when opportunities come your way. So that's our motivation for using these tips. With that said, let me share the first one with you. And you might have already noticed it. Tip number 1, and you might want to write this down, is to stand up when you are presenting. Stand up. Now, I know what you're thinking. Most people, they sit down when they're presenting. It's more comfortable and you kind of feel like you're more part of the group, having a conversation when you're sitting down. But here's the thing. When you're delivering a short presentation, whether that be 60 seconds or 5 minutes or even 10 minutes, standing up can actually have a lot of benefits. For instance, when you stand up, you naturally have more energy. You have more energy because you're not confined to your chair. You're allowed to move around more. You can use your space more when you're presenting as well for slightly longer presentations too. Standing up naturally helps you speak better. Your diaphragm's more upright. Your breathing will be more controlled than when you're sitting down. And here's the last benefit. By standing up, you'll keep your physio happy because your back won't be as sore because you've been sitting down on your Zoom calls so much. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, there's a time and place where you should be seated. In my long webinars that I do, my hour-long ones, my half-day ones, of course, I take a seat. But when I'm delivering a presentation and I want to give it everything I've got for a short period of time, 10 minutes or less, I'm standing up for that because that will allow me to deliver with maximum energy like I'm doing right now. So tip number 2 is interact with your virtual audience. I think this is something we forget because we are not in the same room as our audience. I see we got Gadava speakers from Toastmasters coming in as well. Great to see you here. Thank you for coming. So we forget to communicate with our audience in a two-way conversation. What we tend to do instead when we're presenting on Zoom is we just do all the talking. We just speak. And what do you think that does for our audience? It doesn't do much at all because guess what? There's lots of distractions around them. They've got their phone nearby, for instance. They've got family in the other room that they can talk to. They've got any emails pinging in another tab that you are on, okay? Even the fridge is nearby, people, and that's a tough one to beat. So here's the thing. If you want people to be fully engrossed in what you are saying, you need to immerse them in what you are saying. And that means getting them involved in the presentation. Giving people a role in your online presentation is powerful. Now, there's many different ways that you can get people involved, regardless of the size of audience. Even if you're presenting in front of 500 people in a Zoom call, you can still get them involved. So let's run through a few different options. The easiest way to get people involved, to interact, is to simply ask a question and allow people to unmute and answer that question. Now, this works really well for smaller groups. I would say 40 people and below. Once you get to larger groups, it's not so good. If you ask 500 people what their favorite color is, you're asking for mayhem, okay? So of course, think about the number of people in the room, depending on the option you're using. If there is a larger group you're presenting to, use things like the chat. Get people to comment something in the chat. Use polls, use breakout rooms, use different tools you have at your disposal to get people involved. I like to give people activities in my webinars. So I'll get them to do an activity alone where they think for 2 minutes or they fill something out regarding public speaking. Maybe I get people to think about their story and I say, look, for 2 minutes, think about your motivation for getting started. Think about the key moment which pushed you in a certain direction, and I'll get them to do that on their own. And by interspersing these little breaks, these little activities, it gives people a purpose in your presentation. And when you give them a purpose, they want to stay involved. Now, let's move on to point number 3. So far we've got stand up. Second one was interact. Now, number 3, and this is a big one, is to make sure you use your personality. You need to bring a sense of your personality to the table when you're presenting online. And I think this is something we forget about because we're not in a physical room with other people. What tends to happen is we all become very robotic. We're trying not to make any mistakes when we're presenting online, so our voice goes monotone. We don't tell any personal stories. We don't really bring our personality out at all because we just want to get through this online call. I would suggest going in the opposite direction. You need to bring your personality out because that is ultimately what makes you unique. It's not your career. There's lots of accountants out there. There's lots of lawyers out there. There's lots of public speaking trainers out there. What makes you unique and what makes me unique is my personality. So what I'm saying is if you're a sarcastic person, be sarcastic when you're presenting online. If you like to use humor, use humor. If you're more profound, be more profound. If you're a motivational person, share that as well. When people are in your Zoom call, when they're in your Zoom room, they need to have a sense of who you are. So don't limit your personality when you're presenting online. Because the thing is, we all were scared at first when we were presenting online. We thought it wouldn't even be close to public speaking. But the truth is, it's so much closer than we ever could have imagined to in-person presentations. So don't forget what got you to the dance. Bring your personality forward, and that will help you stand out in your calls. So just to summarize all of that, if you want to stand out, 3 unusual tips for you which help massively would be 1, stand up when you present. 2, interact with your audience, make it a 2-way conversation. And then number 3, bring your personality to the table. If we have any questions, like I say, put them in the chat. I'll happily answer them. Even if they're later on, I will get an answer to you. I'll message you an answer. What I will say is I'm hoping to do more lives like this in the future. I'm thinking every Friday I'll do a live. So if there's a topic you would like me to cover next time, also put that into the chat, into the comments, and I'll be able to use that idea for the next time and answer some of your questions. Last thing I'll say is if you enjoyed these tips today, you might want to think about checking out my new book, The 5 Pillars of Effective Public Speaking. There's the big version. Here's the small version. This is in audiobook form as well and ebook form, and it covers the key skills all great speakers have which help them succeed when they speak in public. It's got about 13 reviews on Amazon so far, and they're all 5 stars. So there must be something half decent in here. I think I've got a question on camera as well. What do you use? Oh, the camera that I use. That's a great question. So I use a Logitech camera, a Logitech C920 Pro, I think it's what it's called. What I'd recommend when it comes to using a camera is get an HD camera, a 1080p quality. That will make sure that you've got the best possible image, because there's nothing worse than seeing a grainy video when someone's presenting. It distracts, and no matter how good a presenter you are, poor quality camera or poor quality sound will affect how people respond to you. So make sure you invest in that if you do have the funds available. But I'm going to round up this live for now. Thank you for listening. I hope you found it useful. And above all, next time, just remember, do something different if you want to stand out when you present online.